Great. So we all know Biden's pro-choice agenda and the roots of legalized abortion in America. But what's less well known is that today is sadly the 100th anniversary of the worldwide legalization of abortion. What can you tell us about that?
Well, sadly, as you say, 100 years ago today, November 18th, 1920, the Soviet Union became the first nation to legalize abortion at any time for any reason. And so that's the 100th anniversary that we're celebrating today. And as you say, it is a little reported news.
And so, why would the USSR legalize abortion? Because if you listen to feminists today, abortion is a human rights issue. It's all about reproductive justice. And yet, the USSR was anything but, for human rights. We saw all the millions who died under Stalin and the other leaders of the Soviet Union. So, why did they push for abortion so adamantly 100 years ago?
Well, the things you mentioned are the things going full circle, of the sort of self-deception and misperception going full circle, because the arguments that we hear today in the United States were pioneered by the Soviets, but the Soviets proclaimed themselves to be pro-freedom and so on, and our people today proclaim themselves to be pro-freedom. But the issue for the Soviets at that time is that they were against the family. They made no bones about it that they were totally against the family, they were against the church, they were against traditional morality. And they also wanted to get women out of the home and into the workplace. Now, why did they particularly want to get women in the workplace? Because they had a disastrous economy that was backward, and they were trying to push for industrialization. So they didn't want their female workers hindered by babies that they couldn't take care of. So that was all of those things were into the mix of why the Soviet Union legalized abortion 100 years ago today.
Terrifying stuff. And then when you look in the decades that were to come after, 100 years ago, 1920, we see that the United States doesn't legalize abortion until 1973. And some European countries and even some Asian countries beat the U.S. Why did the U.S. hold out for so long, and why did it change in the early 1970s?
Well, that's a long story why it changed in the 1970s, but no, it didn't happen. I can tell you what it didn't happen. It didn't happen because all the people were scampering to have abortions and that the average person wanted abortion. That's not what happened at all. There were a handful of very rich and powerful people who wanted abortion on demand, who wanted contraception on demand, who basically wanted to create a world where sex and babies are completely disconnected from one another. Normal people kind of know better, and were resisting it for a long time. They were resisting it, which is kind of interesting. And so the my friend Sue Ellen Browder has a book where she describes how a handful of very rich men um, it kind of took over the women's movement and said it needs to be about abortion, needs to be all abortion all the time. So there's a very specific set of things that gets to be called feminism. And in the United States, being feminist means that you're pro-abortion and you're pro-contraception. But as you and I know, there are plenty of other positions that are pro-woman that have nothing to do with contraception and abortion, but only they get to claim the feminist label, which is kind of interesting.